The betrayal still burns like acid through my veins, but I refuse to be defined by her deception or destroyed by the aftermath. My name is Rocky Roswell, and I'm 36 years old. Each morning, I wake at 5, pour black coffee into my thermos, and drive to whichever construction site needs me that day. My wife, Zenny Roswell, spent $200,000 behind my back, forging my signature, opening accounts in my name, and lying to my face every single day for years. Our friends, people like Melissa Jenkins and her husband Craig, had no idea the extent of her desperation to match their lifestyle. My jaw clenched when I saw those bank statements spread across our kitchen table. The numbers didn't lie, even when she did. I don't want revenge. I want justice. Cold, calculated, and complete. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I pulled into our driveway after 10 hours of supervising concrete pours, my fingers still dusted with a fine cement powder no amount of scrubbing seemed to remove. The manila envelope from the bank sat beside me on the passenger seat where I'd tossed it that morning, corners crumpled from how tightly I'd gripped it all day. For a moment, I just sat there, engine off, listening to the tick of the cooling metal. Our house, the one I'd helped renovate myself 3 years ago, looked the same as always. White trim I'd painted over a long weekend. Garden beds Zenny had insisted on planting with decorative flowers instead of the vegetables I'd suggested. Normal, ordinary, a lie. Inside, I spread every bank statement across our kitchen table in precise rows, like dealing a hand of solitaire where every card was a joker. The home equity line of credit papers went in the center, my forged signature like a knife through my chest every time I looked at it. Then came the credit card statements, 3 of them, all maxed out, department store accounts, an auto loan on a car I'd never seen, $200,000. It seemed both impossible and inevitable at the same time. I heard Zenny's car pull into the driveway at 6:15, 15 minutes later than she usually got home from her administrative job at the dental office. The jingle of her keys, the soft thud of what I knew would be another shopping bag hitting the floor in the entryway. Remember when summer meant your mom's lemonade, so tart it made your jaw ache? That's what anger tastes like when you hold it in your mouth too long. The door to the kitchen swung open. Zenny stood there in a blouse I didn't recognize, something silky with a designer logo on the breast pocket. Her eyes locked on the papers, then me, then back to the papers. Her face froze for half a second before she forced a scoff. "What is this, Rocky? Some kind of ambush?" Her voice tried for indignation but landed somewhere closer to panic. "Sit down," I said, pushing out the chair across from me with my foot. She stayed standing, purse clutched to her side like a shield. "I had a long day. Whatever this is, it's $200,000, I said, tapping the HELOC statement. "That's what this is." Her eyes narrowed, something calculating behind them. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me," I said, picking up the document. "Explain how your signature looks exactly like mine on this home equity line that I never knew about." She finally sat, but with the rigid posture of someone preparing for battle. "You never listen when I talk about how important appearances are. All of Melissa's friends wear Prada and Gucci. They take weekend trips to Aspen. I can't show up with clearance rack handbags and expect to be taken seriously. You think people don't notice these things?" I stared at her, my stomach a hollow pit. "You mortgaged our house to keep up with handbags?" "It's not just handbags," she snapped, color rising in her cheeks. "It's our image, our reputation. I did it for us." "For us?" I repeated, each word sharp as glass. "Was it for us when you forged my signature? Was it for us when you opened 3 credit cards in my name?" She leaned forward, voice rising. "Your problem is you're so small-minded. Your blue-collar brain doesn't get how the real world works. People like Melissa's husband understand investing in appearance." "This blue-collar brain built the roof you just mortgaged," I said, matching her energy. "And you don't look rich, Zenny. You look like a thief." Her hand slammed down on the statements, scattering them. "You will never understand real status. Never. While you're proud of your calluses and dirt under your fingernails, I'm trying to elevate us." "Status?" I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "Is that what we're calling fraud now?" "It's not fraud when you're married," she hissed. "The bank disagrees," I said, gathering the papers back into their rows. "So will the credit bureaus, and probably the police." Her face transformed, a calculation happening behind her eyes. "You wouldn't dare. Not to your wife." "My wife wouldn't steal from me," I said simply. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, her defiant expression telling me everything I needed to know. There was no guilt there, no remorse, just anger at being caught. A notification pinged on my phone. I glanced down automatically, a new bank alert lighting up the screen. HELOC draw increased. I looked back at Zenny, at the slight upward curve of her lip, almost a smile. She'd already made her next move. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen counter with a cup of black coffee in my hands, staring at the steam rising in thin, wispy columns. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those bank statements, those forged signatures, the evidence of betrayal spread across our kitchen table. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the grit of exhaustion behind my lids. My phone lit up with another bank notification. I unlocked it, already knowing what I'd find. $20,000. A fresh draw on the fraudulent HELOC account. Made at 6:45 a.m. The same account we'd fought about last night. The same account she knew I'd discovered. Have you ever felt your heart go completely still? Not racing, not pounding, just a suspended moment where everything inside you stops and you realize you're staring at something so incomprehensible that your body forgets to keep going? I heard Zenny's footsteps on the stairs before I saw her. She breezed into the kitchen wearing workout clothes, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail as if last night had never happened. As if there weren't 220,000 reasons for me to be sitting there, barely breathing. "Morning," she said casually, opening the refrigerator door. "Did you make enough coffee for two?" I turned my phone screen toward her. $20,000, Zenny. This morning." She glanced at it, then reached for a yogurt. "Yes, and?" "After everything we talked about last night." My voice was steady, controlled. "After I told you I knew." She peeled back the yogurt lid, leaning against the counter. "If you won't provide what we need to maintain our lifestyle, I'll handle things myself." Her tone was so matter-of-fact she might have been discussing the weather. "Our lifestyle?" I repeated. "You mean your lifestyle, the one you're building on fraud." "Don't be dramatic." She rolled her eyes. "It's our house, our equity, our future." I set my coffee down carefully, afraid I might crush the mug in my grip. "No, not anymore." Something in my tone made her pause, spoon halfway to her mouth. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. I stood up, grabbing my keys from the counter. "It means I'm done talking." 40 minutes later, I walked into our local bank branch, my hands steady despite the churning in my stomach. The lobby was quiet, just a couple of elderly customers and a young mother with a toddler pulling at her sleeve. "I need to speak with a manager," I told the receptionist. "It's regarding fraudulent activity on my accounts." The branch manager, a woman named Teresa with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, listened without interruption as I explained the situation. When I finished, she nodded once, decisively. "I can pull those records for you, Mr. Roswell. The originals stay with us, but I can provide certified copies for your records and for law enforcement, should you choose to go that route." "Thank you," I said. "That's exactly what I need." She returned 20 minutes later with a folder. "Here are the HELOC application documents, the signature cards, and the withdrawal authorizations for the past 6 months. I flipped through them one by one. There it was, my name in handwriting that wasn't mine, over and over. Some signatures were close approximations, others barely resembled my actual signature. Each document bore a notary stamp in the corner. "Do you have any information on the notary?" I asked. Teresa glanced at the stamp. "Diane Myers. She's not one of our bank notaries. Must be someone your wife used externally." I nodded, keeping my face neutral despite the fact that I'd never heard of Diane Myers in my life. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. Roswell?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to place a freeze on all joint accounts immediately. And I need to open a new individual account. Today." That evening I sat in my truck outside our house, the house I'd helped build with my own 2 hands during weekends off, the house with the mortgage that was now drowning in fraudulent equity loans. I stared at the front door but made no move to go inside. Instead, I pulled out my phone and the business card I'd gotten from a contractor buddy who'd gone through a messy divorce last year. I dialed the number. "Chang Forensic Accounting," answered a crisp, professional voice. "My name is Rocky Roswell," I said. "I need help tracking financial fraud. My wife has taken out over $200,000 in my name without my knowledge or consent." There was a brief pause. I'm Lindy Chang. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? 9 o'clock? Yes. Bring everything, she said. Bank statements, credit reports, loan documents, anything financial from the past 3 years. If there's a paper trail, we're going to find it. I looked up at the house, at the warm light spilling from the windows, at the life I thought I'd built. I'll be there. I arrived at Lindy Chang's office at 8:45 the next morning, my arms loaded with 3 accordion folders stuffed with every financial document I could find. The building was one of those modern glass structures downtown, all clean lines and potted plants in the lobby. Lindy's office was on the 4th floor, with Chang Forensic Accounting etched on a frosted glass door. She greeted me with a firm handshake and no wasted words. Come in. Let's see what you've brought. The office was immaculate, not a paper out of place. Whiteboard walls covered with neat flowcharts and a large conference table that gleamed under recessed lighting. I dumped my folders unceremoniously, watching papers spill across the polished surface. Sorry for the mess, I said. This isn't a mess, Lindy replied, already sorting through statements. This is evidence. I watched as she methodically spread everything out, creating neat stacks. Bank statements here, credit card bills there, loan documents in another pile. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, occasionally pausing to jot notes on a yellow legal pad. Tell me about your daily routine, she said without looking up. Specifically, where you are during business hours. I'm on job sites, construction. Usually from 7 to 4, sometimes later. She nodded, then held up one of the HELOC documents. This was notarized on October 12th at 2:15 p.m. Where were you? I thought back. Overseeing foundation work in Ridgemont. We were pouring concrete that day. I have timesheets to prove it. Good. She made another note, then highlighted the notary stamp. Diane Myers. Do you know her? Never heard of her until yesterday. Lindy pulled out more documents, laying them side by side. 4 different signatures, all supposedly yours, all notarized by the same person. That's our first thread to pull. For the next 2 hours, I sat quietly as Lindy worked through the pile, creating a timeline of fraudulent activity. She color-coded each transaction, yellow for suspicious, red for definitely fraudulent. The table slowly filled with red highlights. Let's categorize these expenses, she said, pulling out a fresh sheet. She created columns: luxury goods, travel, spa and beauty, dining, and miscellaneous. Under luxury goods, she listed $4,200. Gucci handbag, March 15th, $2,800. Prada shoes, March 16th. $3,700. Designer jewelry, April 2nd. The spa and beauty column filled quickly. Monthly packages at exclusive salons, cosmetic procedures I'd never heard about, weekend retreats at desert wellness centers. $6,500 for a rejuvenation package, I read upside down from across the table. What the hell is that? Based on the facility, likely some combination of specialized facials, body treatments, and possibly minimally invasive cosmetic procedures, Lindy answered matter-of-factly. Very popular among a certain demographic. Under travel, she noted weekend trips to Napa Valley, Santa Barbara, and Palm Springs, all places Zenny had told me she was visiting her mother. Each red mark felt like both vindication and a knife twist. I remembered how I'd packed lunches all year to save for a bathroom remodel, how I'd put off replacing my work boots until the soles were worn through, all while she was dropping thousands on handbags and spa weekends. I estimate we're looking at approximately $215,000 in fraudulent or unauthorized spending, Lindy said finally, tapping her calculator. That's preliminary, of course. I'll need a few days to complete a comprehensive analysis. What do I do now? I asked, my voice hollow. You need an attorney, she said. A good one who specializes in marital assets and fraud. I nodded. I have a name, Juan Rivera. I know Juan, she said, nodding approvingly. He's exactly who you need. That afternoon, I sat in Juan Rivera's office downtown. Unlike Lindy's minimalist space, his was all dark wood and leather-bound books, the kind of place that exuded authority. Juan listened intently as I explained the situation, occasionally making notes. When I finished, I handed him Lindy's preliminary report. He flipped through it, his expression darkening. This is textbook marital waste, he said, and forgery, and fraud. What's the next step? We file for legal separation immediately, he said. This freezes assets and creates a paper trail. Then we document every instance of marital waste and push to have those debts assigned to her alone. He leaned forward. You built that house, correct? Much of it, yes. I'm a contractor. Good. We'll fight for you to keep it. He made another note. Rocky, this won't be pretty. Or quick. But based on what I'm seeing here, we have a strong case. That evening I sat alone at our kitchen table, staring at a plate of pasta I couldn't bring myself to eat. Zenny had texted that she was out with the girls, another dinner I knew would appear on some credit statement with a 3-figure total. I looked at her empty chair across from me. Right now, she was probably laughing, ordering another round of drinks, her friends admiring whatever new thing she was wearing. All paid for with money we didn't have, for a life she was pretending to afford. Meanwhile, our mortgage was bloated with that HELOC, our savings drained, and our future mortgaged for the sake of appearances. I pushed my plate away, my appetite gone. 3 days after meeting Lindy, I walked into Juan Rivera's wood-paneled office. The morning light filtered through the blinds, creating stripes across his desk as he slid several documents toward me. These are the initial filings, Juan explained, his voice steady and professional. Petition for legal separation and exclusive use of the marital home. I scanned the paperwork, seeing legal terms that translated my nightmare into formal language. Financial misconduct, marital waste, fraudulent activity. We're making a strong case that you should retain the house, Juan continued, given that you physically built portions of it and that the financial burden of the unauthorized HELOC should remain with the party who initiated it. Lindy Chang sat beside me, placing a thick folder on the desk. I've completed my analysis, she said, opening to reveal meticulously organized spreadsheets. Each page was color-coded, red for confirmed fraud, yellow for suspicious transactions, blue for legitimate household expenses. 43 separate transactions show clear evidence of forgery, Lindy explained, tapping a red highlighted section. Another 17 are questionable, but tied directly to accounts Zenny controlled. Juan nodded approvingly. This is exactly what we need. He turned to me. The judge will see a clear pattern of deception and financial abuse. I stared at the numbers. Each red mark represented a moment Zenny had chosen appearances over our marriage. What happens next? I asked. First mediation, Juan replied. If we can't reach an agreement there, we go to court. But with this evidence, he gestured to Lindy's folder, I believe we're in a strong position either way. I signed each document with a steady hand. Years ago, building my first house, my foreman told me, measure twice, cut once. I was cutting Zenny out of my life with the same precision. The day of mediation arrived faster than I expected. Juan and I arrived early, setting up in the conference room. Lindy's charts were mounted on foam boards, ready for presentation. Remember, Juan advised quietly, stay calm no matter what. Let the evidence speak. I nodded, just as the door opened. Zenny walked in wearing an outfit I'd never seen before, probably another purchase I'd find on next month's statement. Behind her, like a shadow, came her mother Sylvia. Great, just what we needed. The mediator, a silver-haired woman named Patricia, introduced herself and outlined the process. Then she turned to us. Let's begin with your positions. Juan laid out our case methodically. The discovery of the HELOC, the pattern of hidden accounts, the forged signatures. As he spoke, Sylvia's face hardened into a mask of contempt. When it was their turn, Zenny's attorney spoke about misunderstandings and communication issues. Then Sylvia couldn't contain herself any longer. Men provide, she interrupted, folding her arms across her chest. That's what they do. Zenny deserves comfort and security. If Rocky had given her what she needed, none of this would have happened. The mediator raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Roswell's mother is not a party to this mediation. I'm just saying what needs to be said, Sylvia insisted. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. Comfort doesn't require forgery. Security doesn't mean hidden debt. What Zenny did wasn't seeking comfort. It was fraud, plain and simple. Juan nodded slightly. My response had hit the right note. If I may, Lindy said, standing to present her boards. These charts show 43 transactions with Mr. Roswell's forged signature. Each one ties directly to Mrs. Roswell's personal expenses, not household necessities. She walked the mediator through the timeline, pointing out weekend trips that coincided with Zenny's claims of visiting family and luxury purchases made while I worked overtime to cover what I thought were regular bills. The mediator studied the charts carefully, occasionally glancing at Zenny, whose face had grown increasingly pale. After 4 hours of back and forth, Patricia cleared her throat. Based on the evidence presented, I'm prepared to offer a proposal. She outlined terms that matched almost exactly what we'd asked for. The house would remain with me, and the fraudulent debts would follow Zenny. I felt a surge of hope watching Zenny's expression crack. For once, reality was crashing through her carefully constructed facade. When the mediation concluded, Zenny stormed past me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You'll regret embarrassing me like this," she hissed, low enough that only I could hear. Driving home that evening, I noticed neighbors standing on their porches, watching my truck pull into the driveway. Their stares felt heavy, curious. Had Zenny been talking to them, spreading her version of events? I nodded politely, but didn't stop to chat. Inside, I checked the mail that had accumulated during the day. Among the usual bills and flyers was a thick envelope with an official seal. My stomach dropped as I read the stamped text, "Temporary restraining order." I stared at the words on the restraining order until they blurred together. Emotional intimidation, verbal abuse, threatening behavior, lies, every single one of them. My hands shook as I slammed the envelope down on the kitchen counter. The same kitchen counter I'd installed 3 years ago. The same house I'd spent weekends fixing up while Zenny was out spending money we didn't have. And now she was using the legal system to lock me out of my own home. I grabbed my phone and called Juan, straight to voicemail. I left a message that probably made little sense through my clenched teeth, then tried to breathe. 1, 2, 3. The way my dad taught me when I was a kid learning to use power tools. Focus. Don't let emotions make you careless. The doorbell rang at 7:42 p.m. A sheriff's deputy stood on my porch, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Roswell?" he asked. "I have a temporary restraining order to serve." "I know," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "I got it in the mail today." He handed me another copy, officially served this time. "You'll need to vacate the premises immediately. You can take personal items, clothing, toiletries, but you cannot return within 500 feet until after the hearing." "When's the hearing?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. 10 days from now." He glanced around the house. "Do you have somewhere to go?" I nodded mechanically. "My buddy Mike." The deputy waited while I packed a duffel bag, underwear, socks, jeans, my work boots, toothbrush, deodorant, my laptop. It felt surreal, like I was watching myself from above. This was my house. I'd driven every nail, sanded every board, and I was being forced out because of lies. I paused at the bedroom door, looking back at the king-sized bed Zenny and I had shared. The dresser where her jewelry box sat, probably full of items I'd unknowingly paid for. The walls I'd painted the exact shade of blue she wanted. "You ready, sir?" the deputy asked gently. "Yeah." I hefted my bag. "I'm ready." Mike didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door with a duffel bag and dead eyes. He just cleared off his couch, grabbed a spare pillow and blanket from the hall closet, and handed me a beer. "Whatever you need, man," he said. "Stay as long as you want." I stared at his ceiling that night, unable to sleep. The occasional headlights from passing cars swept across the room, reminding me of nights I'd worked late, coming home to what I thought was a normal life. Had any of it been real? Or had Zenny always been planning, calculating, spending? When had she decided I was just a bank account, not a husband? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at the mediation. Not hurt or remorseful, angry, caught, cornered. And now she was striking back. At 7 a.m., I gave up on sleep. Mike's coffee was terrible, too weak, but I drank it anyway, grateful for the roof over my head. I called Juan again, and this time he picked up. "I've already seen the restraining order," he said before I could explain. "We'll fight it." "She's locked me out of my own house based on lies," I said, trying to keep my voice down. Mike was still sleeping. "How is this even legal?" "Temporary restraining orders are granted pretty easily," Juan explained, "but they have to be proven at a hearing. False claims tend to collapse under scrutiny." "In 10 days," I said. "I have to live out of a duffel bag for 10 days while she stays in my house." "I know it's not fair," Juan said, "but here's what we do. Stay calm, keep records of everything, and don't contact her, not even through friends. We need to play this exactly by the book." I took a deep breath. "Okay. And Rocky? This actually helps our case. It shows desperation on her part. The judge will see it." After I hung up, I called work to explain why I'd be late. My boss was understanding. He'd gone through a nasty divorce himself a few years back. Midday, my phone rang. Lindy Chang. "I found something," she said without preamble. "The notary who stamped those HELOC documents? Zenny paid her. My grip tightened on the phone. What? A $7,500 transfer labeled Consulting Services to Diane Myers. She's the notary whose stamp appears on all the forged documents. That's illegal, I said, straightening up. Extremely, Lindy confirmed. And I've got the paper trail. She did the same thing for 2 credit card applications and that personal loan. Something stirred in my chest. Not just anger now, but determination. The restraining order was just another manipulation, another lie. But lies leave trails, just like money does. Send everything to Juan, I said. And thank you. After we hung up, I sat on Mike's couch, staring at the wall. Zenny thought she'd won by pushing me out of my house. She thought wrong. I picked up Lindy's red-lined ledger from my duffel bag, gripping it like a weapon. Because that's exactly what it was. 2 days after finding out about the notary, I was back in Juan Rivera's office. The place had become more familiar than my own house at this point, though technically I didn't have access to my house anymore. We're subpoenaing the notary, Juan said, sliding a document across his desk. The morning light caught on his cufflinks as he gestured to the paper. Diane Myers will have to testify under oath about those documents. I nodded, picturing the woman who'd helped Zenny steal our future. What if she lies? Perjury carries jail time, Juan said, his bulldog jaw set firmly. And we have the financial records Lindy uncovered. Ms. Myers knows we can prove the payment. He leaned back in his chair. People like this fold under pressure. They don't expect to get caught. Like Zenny, I said quietly. Juan's expression softened slightly. Exactly like Zenny. I remember my dad's workshop when I was a kid, the careful way he'd arrange his tools before starting a project, lining everything up in the order he'd need them. Juan reminded me of that now, methodically arranging our case, piece by piece. The hearing on the restraining order is first, he continued. Then we present our evidence about the financial fraud. By the time we're done, the judge will see this for exactly what it is. I rubbed my face with my hands. I hadn't been sleeping well on Mike's couch. And Rocky, Juan added, wear your good suit. First impressions matter. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Or maybe that was just the chill that ran through me when I saw Zenny sitting with her lawyer, dressed like she was attending a business meeting rather than defending fraud. She didn't look at me. Juan nodded toward the front row. Diane Myers sat nervously, hands clasped in her lap. The notary looked nothing like I'd imagined, just an ordinary middle-aged woman in a plain blazer, not some criminal mastermind. When the judge called her to testify, she walked to the stand like someone approaching a dentist's chair. Ms. Myers, Juan began after she was sworn in, did you witness Rocky Roswell sign the home equity line of credit application dated March 15th of this year? She glanced at Zenny, then back at Juan. No, sir. Yet your notary stamp and signature appear on this document, certifying that you did witness his signature. Is that correct? Yes. Can you explain why you would certify something that never happened? The courtroom felt impossibly silent. I could hear the ceiling fan turning lazily overhead. It was a favor, she finally said, her voice barely carrying to where I sat. For Mrs. Roswell. A favor, Juan repeated. Was this favor connected to the $7,500 transferred to your personal account on March 17th? Ms. Myers closed her eyes briefly. Yes. The judge's pen scratched against his notepad, his frown deepening. Lindy Chang took the stand next, methodically walking through the financial evidence. Her voice was calm and precise as she detailed each fraudulent transaction, each forged document, each unauthorized withdrawal. With every revelation, I watched Zenny sink lower in her seat. The pattern is clear, Lindy concluded. Mrs. Roswell systematically forged signatures, paid for false notarization, and diverted funds for personal luxury expenses. By the time court adjourned for the day, I felt drained but oddly lighter. The truth was finally out there, on record, undeniable. I needed some time alone, so I stopped at a small diner on my way back to Mike's place. I was halfway through a lukewarm coffee when the bell above the door jingled. I glanced up and froze. Melissa, Zenny's glamorous friend, the one she'd been trying so desperately to impress, walked in with another woman. Her eyes locked with mine, and after a moment of recognition, she headed straight for my table. Rocky, she said, her voice a sharp whisper. So the handbags were fake all along. I blinked, unsure what she meant. Zenny, Melissa clarified, leaning closer. All that designer stuff? Those weekend trips? She was forging documents to pay for it? Word was already spreading. The social circle Zenny had sacrificed everything to impress now knew the truth. "I don't think that's something I should discuss," I said carefully. Melissa straightened, adjusting her genuine designer purse on her shoulder. "Well, we'll be in court tomorrow. Some of us want to see the truth for ourselves." True to her word, the next morning Melissa and another friend sat prominently in the gallery. Their whispers carried through the courtroom as Zenny took the stand, their eyes critically assessing her now obvious knockoff jewelry and handbag. "It was necessity," Zenny insisted under questioning. "Rocky wouldn't understand the importance of—" "The importance of committing fraud?" Juan interrupted. I barely heard Zenny's response. I was watching her eyes as they darted to the gallery, to Melissa and her friend. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw her mask slip. The confident facade cracked as understanding dawned. The very people she'd been desperate to impress were now witnessing her humiliation. Zenny's voice faltered mid-sentence. The court reporter asked her to repeat herself. In that moment, looking at her face, I knew something had fundamentally shifted. The courtroom seemed to shrink around us as Zenny continued her testimony. I sat beside Juan, trying to keep my face neutral while she wove her stories. The morning light streamed through the high windows, casting long rectangles across the wooden floor. "I only wanted to keep up," Zenny insisted, her voice taking on that wounded tone I'd heard so many times at home. "You don't know how humiliating it is when everyone else has more." Juan stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. "Mrs. Roswell, let's be direct. Did you or did you not forge your husband's signature on multiple financial documents?" The silence stretched between them. I watched Zenny's fingers twist together in her lap. "I signed his name," she finally admitted. "But it was for our benefit, for our social standing." "A simple yes would suffice," Juan replied. "And the notary you paid to falsely certify these forgeries? Was that also for your social standing?" Zenny's eyes darted toward her lawyer, who sat motionless. "Mrs. Roswell," Juan pressed, "did you pay Diane Myers to falsely certify documents bearing your husband's forged signature?" "Yes," she whispered, then cleared her throat. "Yes." The word hung in the air like something physical. I remember the taste of coffee from that morning suddenly turning bitter in my mouth. Juan nodded to Lindy, who approached with her final presentation, meticulously organized charts documenting every unauthorized transaction. The projector hummed to life, casting a blue-white glow across the courtroom. "As you can see, Your Honor," Lindy explained, pointing to color-coded columns, "the total fraudulent debt exceeds $200,000. Each red line represents a transaction where Mr. Roswell's signature was forged." The screen was overwhelmed with red. Behind me I heard Melissa's voice, pitched just loud enough to carry, "So, all that Prada was fraud." A ripple of laughter spread through the gallery. I didn't turn around, but I felt the shift in the room, the way attention swiveled from the evidence to Zenny's reaction. I glanced at her then. Her shoulders had slumped forward, her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the flush creeping up her neck. For a second, just a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered waking up to that bank alert, the cold sweat of realizing how close we'd come to losing everything. The judge leaned forward, his expression hardening as he studied the financial records. He removed his glasses, polished them slowly with a cloth, and replaced them with deliberate care. "I've seen enough," he said finally. "We'll take a brief recess before I deliver preliminary rulings." The 90 minutes that followed were the longest of my life. I sat on a bench in the corridor, watching the minute hand on the wall clock drag itself in tiny increments. Juan paced nearby, occasionally checking his phone. "You did well in there," he told me. "Stay focused. We're close." When we reconvened, the judge didn't waste time. "Regarding the temporary restraining order against Mr. Roswell, I find insufficient evidence to support claims of intimidation or abuse. The order is hereby vacated." My chest loosened for what felt like the first time in weeks. Furthermore, given the extensive evidence of financial misconduct and fraudulent activity by Mrs. Roswell, I am granting exclusive use of the marital home to Mr. Roswell, effective immediately. I heard Zenny make a small sound, something between a gasp and a protest. "The debts incurred through fraudulent means will be allocated solely to Mrs. Roswell as marital waste. The court will provide detailed written orders within 72 hours. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the room. Juan squeezed my shoulder. "We did it," he murmured. That evening, I drove past my house, our house, technically still locked out until the paperwork cleared. The golden hour light made the windows gleam like honey. I parked across the street, engine idling. There were lights on inside. Zenny was still there, packing perhaps, or just sitting in the aftermath of her collapsed deception. I didn't much care which. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles whitening. The house I'd built with my own hands, the one I'd almost lost to her schemes, would be mine alone soon. The thought didn't bring the triumph I'd expected, just a quiet relief and the strange, hollow feeling that comes after a long fight. I sat there until the streetlights flickered on, eyes fixed on the place that had once held all my dreams, then all my nightmares, and would soon just be home again. 3 days after the ruling, I stood on my front porch with a shiny new set of keys. The locksmith had just left, and Juan stood beside me with a file of official papers. The judge's order was signed, sealed, and delivered. "It's all yours now," Juan said, handing me the keys. "Legal exclusive use, fully documented." I slid the key into the lock, turned it, and felt the tumblers click into place. The door swung open, and I stepped across the threshold that was now mine alone. "Thank you," I told Juan, shaking his hand firmly. "For everything." "Just doing my job," he replied with a slight smile. "I'll be in touch about the final divorce paperwork." After Juan left, I stood in the entryway, breathing deeply. The house smelled different somehow, cleaner, simpler. A weight I hadn't fully acknowledged lifted off my chest. Stacked neatly by the door were several boxes labeled in Zenny's flowing script. Clothes, shoes, personal. Court-appointed movers had supervised as she packed her essentials, making sure she took only what was legally hers. No furniture, no appliances, nothing that could be tied to our joint assets. I walked through each room slowly, reacquainting myself with my own space. The living room looked emptier without her collection of decorative pillows. The bathroom counter no longer overflowed with expensive creams and makeup. The walk-in closet was half empty, her designer clothes, the real ones and the knockoffs, gone. It felt like someone had opened all the windows in my life and let fresh air blow through. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter, the granite I'd installed myself 3 years ago. Back then, Zenny had complained it wasn't marble like Melissa's. Now its solid, unpretentious surface felt exactly right. The quiet struck me most. No reality TV shows blaring, no phone conversations about who bought what or where someone vacationed. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and my own footsteps on the hardwood floors. 2 days later, I was in the garage organizing tools when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I spotted Zenny's silver sedan. My stomach tightened as I walked to the front door. She stood on the porch in oversized sunglasses, dressed like she was heading to a business meeting rather than picking up her belongings. "I've come for my things," she said, her voice carefully neutral. I nodded, stepping aside. "The boxes are right there." Zenny removed her sunglasses, tucking them into her purse. Her eyes scanned the entryway, then moved to the living room beyond. Something in her expression shifted. "It looks empty in here," she said softly. "It's peaceful," I corrected. She took a tentative step toward me. "Rocky, maybe we can start over." Her voice had that honeyed tone she used when trying to smooth things over. "This whole thing got out of hand, but we had something good once." I felt a flash of disbelief. After everything, the fraud, the lies, the restraining order, she thought we could just reset? "No," I said firmly. "You made your choices. 200,000 of them. You're really going to throw away 8 years over money?" Her voice hardened slightly. "It wasn't about money," I said. "It was about trust, about respect. You had neither." Her face twisted, that familiar flash of anger breaking through her composed facade. "Fine. Enjoy your little house and your little life. Some men understand ambition." She grabbed the first box roughly, marching it to her car. I watched as she loaded each one, her movements becoming increasingly agitated. When the last box was loaded, she slammed her trunk shut with unnecessary force and drove away without another glance. That evening, I invited Lindy and Juan over. They'd never seen my house before, only photographs and floor plans during the case. I grilled steaks in the backyard while Lindy admired the kitchen. "You did all this tile work yourself?" she asked, running her hand over the backsplash. I nodded. "Built most of the cabinets, too." Juan explored the living room. Solid craftsmanship everywhere. "No wonder you fought so hard for this place." Later, we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd first confronted Zenny with the bank statements. Now it held a simple meal and 3 water glasses. "I can't thank you both enough," I said, raising my glass, "for believing me, for following the evidence, for making sure the truth came out." "To truth," Lindy said, lifting her glass. "And to peace," Juan added. We clinked glasses, and I felt something settle inside me, a calm I hadn't experienced in months. Through the open windows, I heard laughter from neighbors walking past. A snippet of conversation drifted in. "Can you believe she forged all those papers?" The gossip was spreading quickly. Zenny's carefully constructed image was unraveling throughout the neighborhood, just as it had among her friends. For someone who lived for appearances, there could be no harsher punishment. I didn't join in the gossip. I didn't need to. The truth had done its work without my help. 6 weeks after the final hearing, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, right where this whole nightmare had started. Morning sunlight spilled across the same surface where I'd once laid out bank statements like crime scene photos. Now, it held nothing but a mug of black coffee and the day's newspaper. I took a slow sip, savoring the quiet. No alerts from the bank app, no unexpected bills in the mail, just the steady rhythm of my own life, back on track. Remember how your chest used to tighten every time your phone buzzed? That constant dread that some new financial bomb was about to detonate? It's amazing how quickly your body learns to relax when the threat is finally gone. The forensic accountant had tracked down every last dollar, and the judge's ruling had been crystal clear. Zenny owned the debt she'd created, all of it. My credit score had already climbed 60 points since the separation of our finances. I'd run into Rick from the hardware store last week. He'd mentioned seeing Zenny around town, driving a 10-year-old Camry with a dented fender. She'd taken an apartment on the east side of town, the complete opposite of the luxury condos she used to point out in magazines. "Barely keeping up with the garnished wages," Rick had said, not bothering to lower his voice in the paint aisle. "My cousin works HR at that marketing firm where she landed. Says she's taking every overtime shift they'll give her." I hadn't responded. Didn't need to. The truth was out there now, spreading through town without any help from me. The strangest part? I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, no joy in her struggle, just a profound relief that it wasn't my struggle anymore. I rinsed my coffee mug in the sink, thinking about how Zenny's social circle had collapsed around her. Melissa, that glamorous friend she'd been so desperate to impress, had cut her off completely. I'd spotted Melissa at the cafe downtown last Sunday, holding court at a table of women in oversized sunglasses. Zenny wasn't among them. When Melissa noticed me, she'd actually waved me over. "Rocky, join us for a minute?" I'd kept it brief, polite. Zenny tried to call me last week. Melissa had volunteered without prompting. Can you believe the nerve? After lying to all of us for years? She'd looked around the table for support, receiving affirming nods. I just nodded and excused myself. I had lumber to pick up and a life to live. Yesterday at the grocery store, I'd spotted Zenny in the cereal aisle. She'd been studying prices, calculator in hand. When another shopper recognized her, whispers followed in her wake. The flush on her cheeks told me everything. That humiliation cut deeper than any collection notice ever could. For someone who'd mortgaged our future for the sake of appearances, there could be no harsher punishment than having her true image reflected back at her from every direction. I headed out to my truck, appreciating how the engine turned over without worry. No more calculations about which bill to pay first or what could wait another week. The house was secure, the mortgage current, the future uncluttered by someone else's reckless choices. That evening, after finishing some repairs on the back deck, I showered and made a simple dinner. The TV stayed off. I preferred the quiet now, the sound of my own thoughts no longer racing with anxiety. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike, asking if I wanted to join the weekend fishing trip up at Cedar Lake. I typed back a quick, "Count me in." Another small pleasure reclaimed, spending my time and money how I chose. When bedtime came, I walked through the house, turning off lights and checking windows. At the front door, I turned the deadbolt and listened to that satisfying click as the lock engaged. I stood there a moment, hand still on the doorknob, taking in the significance of that sound. My lock, my door, my house, my life, steady and uncompromised. That small click was the sound of security, the sound of choices that belonged only to me, the sound of truth restored. Some might call it just a lock turning, but I knew better. It was the sound of freedom. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.